All right. As mentioned, if you've been sticking with us here, we've been getting more into Q&A with Roger and just hearing from his insight in his past 100 years. You know, Roger, in the first 27 episodes, you talked a lot about your past, and family is a big part of your past, obviously. And you've had some really difficult luck in terms of health, and you've lost two wives and three children. How do you deal with it? How do you stay positive? I'm sure you have that conversation often.
Yes, well, I think I told in one of the episodes, Jenny and I were married 1949, and we got up there in years of we had 40th anniversary, and I said to her, "Let's have our nice dinner party. We might not make it to the 50th. Everybody has a golden anniversary, but let's have a silver or whatever they call the 40th." So we had 100 people over in our backyard, and we went to a night up for dinner. We had a real nice time, and she died on our 43rd anniversary. So I don't know if I was just prophetic on that deal or not, but she had her 50th anniversary at the 40th time. And how do you handle something like that? Not only did I lose my wife at that time, but I also lost my job because, like I told you in one of the previous episodes, Dean had a policy that you had to retire at the age 65. And you can argue one way or the other, but good or bad. And the reason they have it so they don't have to argue when somebody can't handle the job. And I felt that I was capable of doing the job, but it was a policy. And they said, you pick your successor. So I picked my successor. And I was president of the American Frozen Food Deal. And Linda and I went out to California for their annual convention. We both had significant parts. She had to hold a tea for the wives of the other executives of the American Frozen Food Institute. And I had to give a talk and so on and so forth. She had a pain in her back, so I took her to the emergency ward the day that she was going to have the tea and the day I had to give a talk. So we got up in the morning, walked to the hospital, was only a block, and they gave her some pain pills and some muscle relaxants. And she got through her duties and I got through mine and brought her home and went to the doctor, and they doctored from October until March without knowing what the problem was. They thought it was arthritis and so forth. And it turned out that we went to a neurologist, and he said cancer had metastasized in her back, but they still didn't know where the cancer was. It turned out with invasive surgery that it was pancreatic cancer. So here I was in 1992, I was 65 in the fall when she had it, and we came into the spring. I was still wrapping up my job at Larson Company and also with my association activities. And when they said she had pancreatic cancer, you knew that that was the end. So she was in the hospital, and I had arranged for, she always liked flowers, so I hired somebody to plant the whole backyard full of flowers. And hired somebody, and she was going to be a hospice at home. We had everything all set, and she took a turn for the worse. And Kathy and Greg and their three kids were out, and they sang Christmas or church songs, and it was Saturday afternoon. And Saturday night, my son-in-law from Las Vegas came. I said, let's stop at the hospital now because I don't know how long she's going to live. So then I said to the nurse, will she live the rest of the night? She said, I can't tell you that. I said, well, just give me an idea. I want to bring Rick home to our house. Well, she nodded that she thought she would make it. So I brought Rick home, and shortly thereafter I got a phone call that she took a turn for the worse, and the nurses had moved everything out of her room, and including Linda, and put her right by the central desk in the hospital so they could keep an eye on her.
Including Jenny, right?
Yeah, Jenny. But I didn't even make it back. She was dead when we got there. So here I was, lost the wife, and lost the job, and here I sat. But shortly thereafter, I got the call from. I took a trip to Ohio to visit my brother for a week. I came home and my car conked out at there's some community green or something, a real bad area in Chicago. My car conked out there. And I left the car at the filling station. I called my son and he came to pick me up, and I didn't know if I had any car left. I arranged to have a garage pick it up. They pulled it into the garage and fixed up whatever was wrong with the car. And then I had a meeting at Dean Foods next week and had a ride down there with another president of the Green Bay Pickle Company. They dropped me off. I picked up my car. That's a couple of stories I have about picking up cars. And I got back from that, and then shortly thereafter, they called. I had to go to Washington for this wrapping up my American Frozen Institute responsibilities. And then Volka called and said, "They really want you in Poland." Well, I had been kind of pussyfooting on it. I wasn't really thinking about going because I was going to spend time with Linda. But now here I lost Linda. I lost my job. I had ambition. And she said, I said, "I'll stop at the Volka office." So I stopped at the Volka office and said, "Would you please go to Poland?" She picked up the phone and called Poland. They said, "You got a passport?" I said, "Yes." So believe it or not, 7 days later, I was in Poland. I called my kids. I said, "I'm going to Poland." So that really saved me. I mean, it kept me active from 1993 until I made my last trip over there in 2017, and it just opened up a whole new life for me. And then, of course, I married Linda, and she got involved with my trips. And Linda and Jenny were two different people, but they both fit into my lives. They're wonderful wives and good wives. And she enjoyed to travel over to Europe. I don't think that Jenny would have enjoyed those trips so much, but Linda enjoyed them, and we enjoyed the trips. And that really helped me get through that. Now, I thought sure that I would die before Linda. We came to the new perspective here. I wanted to make sure she was taken care of, and I talked about these in previous episodes. She ended up going to the memory unit a year ago this July, and she died in March, which was a big surprise to me because I thought sure I would be gone first. But she said to me a couple months ago, "I would like to die with you." Well, she in effect got her wish because she wanted to die while I was still around, because she was really nervous about not having me because I was with her all my waking hours basically when I was here. Great gal. And then at the funeral, Jake, the vice president of Snyder, the nice young gentleman sitting next to me here, came to the funeral, and he saw pictures of Linda and me in Poland or Ukraine, wherever it was. And he asked Will, "What's the deal?" And Will said, "Well, I've just done some volunteer work in Eastern Europe." He said, "Well, I'd like to talk to him." So I had a lunch or breakfast with Jake. And he said, "I'd like to talk to you again." So I had another lunch and breakfast with him. And the third one, I said, "Would you like to have me give a talk to your management team at Snyder?" He said, "Would you do that?" I said, "Sure." So Linda died March 2nd, and I still remember the call. He called me, he said, "You're on for April 3rd. So that was 1 month and the day after Linda passed away that I was at Snyder, and I gave a talk for, there must have been 20 people there.
Yeah.
And I enjoyed it, and I think the people enjoyed it. It had nothing to do with trucking, but evidently they got some interest in it, in that, hey, maybe when they retire, they can find something like that to do. But I enjoyed it, and since that time, Jake has been a godsend for me. I mean, we've had a few beers together, and we've eaten a few Supreme pizzas, and now he came to me a month ago. He said, "I have an idea. I want to talk to you about it." With trepidation, I said, "Come on over." So he sat down and he said, "I want to make a YouTube video of your life." I said, "Oh man." So that's why we're sitting here now, and it's been a real joy. I think we both have enjoyed it. We don't know what we're going to be doing when this is done, but I've enjoyed it, and it's really nice reflecting on your life, and you wonder how you got through some of the to Jan, but then you also remember all the fine people that you met along the way. And Jake is the same age as my grandsons, several of my grandsons, so it's just like having a grandson with me. So, Jake, you meant a lot to me.
Thank you.
So, how did I handle the other ones? They're tough when your kids die. Diane, I think I told you, she called me. She had lupus when she was in high school, and she went to a doctor, and doctor said, you have melanoma. And she called me and she was crying on the phone. She said, I have melanoma. And I just said, what do you want to do? She said, I want to go to Alaska. So we went to Alaska. We had a nice trip. And the grandsons, I chartered a plane for them to go salmon fishing. So an 18-year-old kid took my 3 grandsons on the plane, and they went salmon fishing with fly rods. And like I said before, I think they couldn't get the smile off their face for several days. And I did a mundane thing like whale watching while they were salmon fishing. And Brenda, she was she worked at Media Solutions in Las Vegas, no children. They detected a pea-sized tumor in her breast, and I think she lasted 5 years, and then she died. Interestingly, she was at home, and they found her on her bed. She was all dressed in her best dress she could. She must have been prophetic. She said, I'm not going to live very long. She changed her clothes and put her best dress on and was on bed, and that's where she died. And then Greg, he was doing fine. He retired. He had a nice retirement home on the Wisconsin River near Poinet. And then he never was much of a talker, but he had trouble talking. So went to the doctor, and they found out that he had glioblastoma, incurable brain tumor. So they operated, took the tumor out. He lasted, I think, 30 months, which was exceptional. He couldn't talk, but he still was ambulatory. And we went to a Rose Bowl game. Diane went to Alaska. Greg went to a Rose Bowl game. And then he died in 1922. So that was the end of my family. Kind of amazing when you lose your 3 kids. It's tough losing kids. My wife died, my first wife died at 66, and Linda died at 84. You expect to live longer than 64. 84 is still a pretty good life. But when your kids die at 50 and 56, 70, it's a tough thing to do. But I got through it, and you can't sit around waiting for sympathy. I went to a couple Blue Funk meetings, and I said, that's not for me. When somebody close to you dies, they have these group sessions where you talk about all your woes, and I did 1 or 2 of them, and I said, I can't handle that. So I went out and made my own surroundings rather than to sit there and just mope, because you aren't going to get sympathy from people. They're going to feel sorry for you, but they aren't really going to do anything. You have to do something yourself to work out of it. And I tried to do that. And so far, I think it's helped me. I could have gone in my Blue Funks, but by the way, I almost 4 siblings too before I died. So, and I lost a brother-in-law at 50. Got a call. I was going to go with my wife Jenny and a friend of mine and his wife Bernie. We were going to go up north for a couple of days, and I got home to change clothes and got a telephone call that my brother-in-law had a stroke and he was dead at 50. So then I had to go and tell my mother. So I remember that. Another thing I remember that was very difficult to do, we had an accident with some of our field equipment on the highway, and I think it resulted in 1 or 2 deaths of our employees. And I thought, I'm going to go to the funeral home. I never met the parents or the family. I went to the funeral home and offered my condolences, and that was very difficult to do. I still remember that. But I felt I was obligated to show them that I was concerned about having lost a member of their family. So I've had lots of highs in my life and lots of lows, but somehow or other, I think the highs have won out.